Welcome to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. There are no traffic jams along the Extra Mile when you're studying for your bar exam. And now, your host, Jackson Mumey, owner of the Celebration Bar Review.
Well, hey everybody, welcome to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. This is Jackson Mumey. So glad that you're with us today, spending time as we count down and get closer to the upcoming February 2017 bar exam. By the time that this episode releases, we're going to be a little under 20 days until your exam. So I think today's message is going to be right on point for those of you taking that test. We're looking at part 5 of our Study Strategies series, and I've titled today's episode, Hitting the Wall and How to Overcome It. And so I hope you'll stick around. I've got some really great strategies for you to use as you're getting into that final stretch before the test in just a few weeks. Now, if you're taking the bar exam later than February, in July 2017, or maybe in February or July of 2018, I'm glad you're with us as well. We've got lots of great information for you today. I think you'll find this to be helpful, even though it may not be exactly where you are in your studies today. But for those of you that are taking the exam later in 2017 or 2018, I want to offer a special invitation to you to join me this Thursday for a live masterclass. It's called How to Make the Next Bar Exam Your Last Bar Exam. We're going to look at the 4 steps that you have to follow in order to pass the exam. It's material that we've offered to thousands of people, and we've seen great success with it. And it's totally free. The live webinar will be at 3 p.m. Eastern. That would be 12 noon Pacific time on Thursday, February 2nd. I hope you'll join me, but you do need to register in advance. And to register, all you need to do is go to celebrationbarreview.com, click on the button to claim your free seat. Now, if Thursday at 3 Eastern doesn't work for you, or you just want to get to that material right away, you can schedule an on-demand viewing of the same material. Just scroll down that page a little bit. You'll see another button. Click on that, and you can jump right in and watch the material. Now, I will say that the magic really happens live, because that's the opportunity for you to ask me questions, and we do set time aside for me to respond to those. So I do hope you can join me Thursday at 3 p.m. I think it'll be well worth your time when we look at how to make the next bar exam your last bar exam. One other note, for those of you that are taking the February test, I know that some of you may be tempted to want to join me on that webinar this Thursday. And candidly, while I'd love to have you, I don't know that it's the best use of your time right now. We're going to be looking at a process, not an event, not a magic bullet that suddenly changes everything overnight. And so I really think your time might be better spent doing other things. You're, of course, welcome to join us. But for those of you taking the test in July 2017, you absolutely should be with me on Thursday. This is information that's going to be literally life-changing for you if you follow it. So I hope you'll be with me one way or the other, or on demand. So we're counting down to the February bar, and here we are, less than 20 days to go. Now, as I'm recording today, we have an interesting event going on in our town. As some of you may know, Sarah and I live in a town called Celebration, Florida. It's right outside the Magic Kingdom. That's what they call it. I didn't make up that name. Right outside Disney's Magic Kingdom. Celebration is a town that was built and developed by the Walt Disney Corporation. And as a result, it gets a lot of attention, and a lot of events are held here. Well, today, this weekend actually, we have an event called the Celebration Marathon and Half Marathon. And this morning, the marathon is running. And there are literally thousands of people in the streets, on the bike paths, the walking paths, in the every nook and cranny of our little tiny town. And it's raining, and it's cold, and it's miserable. It's a great combination, really. And of course, like all good caffeinated people, I had to go get my coffee this morning. And so I had to weave my way through the marathon runners and the officials and the crowds and so on to go and get my coffee. Now, I tell you this because I'm not a runner. I need my walks and I take them, but I'm not a fan of running. There's no part of me that thinks it's a good idea to run. I just don't. But I have great respect for people that do this. And I was absolutely in awe this morning of watching the marathon runners going through the cold, the wet, the rain, running 26.2 miles for no discernible reason to me. Nonetheless, it's an extraordinary experience, I'm told, for people that do it. And obviously lots of people do it. But it's also really analogous, I think, to what a lot of bar takers are going through. Taking the bar exam for many people is both a mental and physical marathon. And if you're taking the exam in just a couple of weeks, you're feeling it. I don't have to tell you that right now you're probably feeling the fatigue, the mental fatigue and the physical fatigue that accompany a great use of energy and outpouring of your intellect and your physical stamina, and you're just feeling bad right now. Now, I'm told that when runners run, there is a point somewhere along the route in which many people metaphorically hit a wall. They just feel like they can't go any further. And I suppose that's different for everyone, but there is some imaginary, in our minds, but in the runner's mind, very real wall. They just reach that point and they hit the wall. And when they hit the wall, they're faced with a choice. They could give up or they can keep going. I mean, there are some options within that, but basically that's the choice. You stop or you go. And I think that when we're at this point of 15 to 20 days to the exam, a lot of bar takers are in fact hitting the wall. So today I want to focus on part 5 of our study strategies and talk about how you can overcome that hitting the wall and what you need to do about it. Now, if you haven't been following along, if you haven't been a subscriber to the podcast series, let me just tell you that going back to episode 127, we started our series on study strategies by talking about the fact that you can't use brute force to beat the exam. You can't kill it by overworking it, overstudying it, outthinking it. In episode 128, we talked about the counterproductive nature of panic and why panic doesn't serve you well at this particular stage and how to avoid that. In episode 129, we looked at two concepts, passion and vision, and why you needed them in order to push you along at that particular stage of your study. And then last week's episode, 130, we looked at a technique called spaced repetition, a way to learn more in less time. Well, today I'm moving away a little bit from the mechanics of learning and studying into the psychology of what's happening to you at this particular moment. And so I recognize that some of you really just want an answer to how do you interpret the rule against perpetuities. I don't have that for you. You got to be in the bar review course to get that kind of detail. And for those of you in our course, you know what I'm talking about. We do provide you with that and much more. But that's not the purpose of today's message. What I want to talk about is sort of the demons that sit on a lot of bar takers' shoulders right now and how to deal with them and how to resolve them. And there are 5 things that I think you have to do when you hit the wall at this point in your study. So let's jump right into them. The first thing is that whenever that wall occurs, wherever it occurs, maybe it's happening today, maybe it'll happen in a few days, but it probably will happen. When that happens, what you want to do is start to transition. You want to transition into a review mode from an active study mode. What do I mean by that? Well, up to a certain point, most of you have been acquiring new information. You've been learning new subjects or going through subjects that perhaps you haven't looked at since law school or ever. And you've been going through lectures and reading and question practice, which is all great. But there does come a point in time when you have to make a transition from that active learning of new material into a consolidation of what you've already learned. And we call this transition point the review point or the mode when you really switch gears. Now, as I was watching people on the marathon route today, I realized that there were a couple things that were happening. Apparently, my office is not far from where a lot of people seem to hit the wall. And these were the early runners, the people that are probably the best runners that are out there. But as I've been watching today, what I've noticed is more and more people, as they get close to where I can see them, slow down their run. They slow it down, or in some cases, they even just go to a walk. No, not slow walk, but a walk. In other words, they're making some sort of a transition. There's some mental transition and physical transition that has to happen. For you as a bar taker, the same thing is true. You've literally got to transition. If what you've been doing, and this would not be true, I think, for people in our course, but if you've been in what I call the big box bar review, you've probably been spending 10, 12, 15 hours a day in study. There comes a point where you literally have to shut that down and move into a different mode. That simply acquiring more information, cramming, or memorizing, if that's what your course told you to do, simply doesn't become productive anymore. And you need to switch that off and change the mode. Now, if you're in our course, we've done that for you automatically in following the study guide, and we're literally starting to trim off and cut back and give you less work to do. But the idea is that one way or the other, you have to change the pace or the gait that you're following. The other thing I noticed with the marathon runners at different points along the route, but certainly here in what I think seems to be the wall, is that there are aid stations. And at these aid stations, they've got gel, they've got water, they've got Gatorade. Looks like they've got a lot of stuff. And what I see happening is that runners, some of them stop at the booth. Some of them just grab their water and keep moving as they're going, which is, I think, uber cool. But a lot of people stop and fix what's wrong. I can see people putting on gel. I can see them putting on some Band-Aids. I can see them toweling off because it is raining really hard. In other words, they're fixing what hurts. Now, for a bar taker, what this means is that when you get to the transition point, you have to start fixing what hurts. If you're having difficulty with a particular area, that's the area you want to focus on right now. Sort of like, knocking birds off the wire or I'm sure there's some analog to a digital game, but I'm not that guy. So the point is you're simply taking one item, working on it, getting it resolved, then the next, then the next. Fix what it is that's bothering you as best you can. Now, are these runners getting a total medical checkup and full fix? Of course not. They're just getting a temporary Band-Aid to keep moving. And in a sense, that's what you're doing as well. You're just getting a temporary fix so that you can keep moving. What is it I need to know today? For those of you that continue to try and acquire brand new information all the way to the end, you'll find that you have no opportunity to do this. And without that consolidation point, without that opportunity to fix what's hurting, what's wrong, what's not working, you're going to find yourself in a lot of trouble on the exam. It's very difficult to make that transition on exam day. So my advice to all of you is start that transition point. When should you start it? Well, in our course, we say about February 10th for the February exam or July 10th for the July exam. It's a good time. It gives you a couple of weeks to kind of slow down, get your focus, get your bearings, fix whatever needs to be worked on. Now, obviously, that means you cannot go back through and study everything you've learned from start to finish again. And yet, every exam I see people who try to do this. That's a really bad strategy. You'll be exhausted, you'll be wiped out, and it won't improve your understanding of any of the material. But beyond that, it's really not necessary. If you know something, you know it. You don't have to relearn it. What you should be doing right now is acquiring better knowledge or new knowledge of things where you were having difficulty. So, when you find yourself at the wall, I think the first step is to transition. Make a transition, keep moving. If you have to walk for a little while, walk for a little while. But don't just keep doing the same old thing. It won't work very well. Step number 2 when you hit the wall, for me at least, is that you need to make an objective assessment of where you are and then act on it. One of the things I noticed on the marathon route today as I was weaving in and out of the route was that at different points along the way, the organizers have these big digital timers set up on the road. And I thought, well, okay, that's kind of cool. I mean, what's the point of that? And then I realized that as the runners went by, they were looking at that digital timer. A lot of them were looking at their own monitors, their wrist monitors or watches or clocks or whatever. And I heard people in the crowd saying, oh yeah, they're on a 3:35 pace or something. I mean, whatever that means, right? So the idea was that the runners were getting an objective assessment of how long it had taken them to get to certain checkpoints. Now, that might be obvious to some of you, but here's what it means in the bar. I find bar takers are notoriously bad at objective assessment at this stage. Really don't do a particularly good job at it. Some people think that they're way behind when they're almost finished with their substantive studies. Other people who are much further back think they're doing just fine and they're, blissfully unaware. And most people feel like they should be doing more even when it's not necessary. In other words, it's not very objective. One of the things I think you have to do is to take this objective assessment. What have you accomplished? Where are you now? So how do you do that? Well, I think it's pretty easy with the multistate. I think you can do some testing, look at your scores, and see what they look like. Not that they're good or bad, just objectively, where are they? But then the key is go back in time. Look at where you started with your multistate or with that particular subject. Look to see if there's been improvement. If there's been improvement, then is it enough improvement that you feel comfortable with that subject and you can move on? If it's not, you may want to spend a little bit more time there. And that's a more objective assessment than just your sort of gut feeling about, oh, I like this subject or I don't like this subject. In the same way with essays, if you think your essay writing is not improved, go back and read your early essays. I say this to our students all the time, and they're consistently surprised, I think, at how much better their writing has become, how much more organized and disciplined and focused, better use of the law, and so on. But in some way, you need to go back and review. And the best way to review what you've done and compare it to today is literally put the documents side by side. Take an essay that you wrote in torts at the beginning of your study and compare it to one you've just done. Is there a difference? If there's a difference, then you've got a more objective assessment of where you are right now, and you can make a decision about whether or not to spend, again, more time in that subject. So I think in one sense or another, you need that objective assessment. Now, if you're in a course like ours, and you're part of the personal or premium mentoring, then I'm here to help you with that objective assessment, and I'm glad to do that. If you're in a big box bar review or you're studying on your own, then use the tools that are given to you in the course or available to you and make that assessment. And that's fine. You can be perfectly comfortable and successful by doing your own assessment. And then when you've made the assessment, act on it. If the assessment that you're making is, yeah, I'm pretty good on this subject, then move on. Go to something else. If your assessment is, wow, I do not know the hearsay rules and evidence, then spend some time with the hearsay rules and evidence. Now, that doesn't mean you spend time learning the relevancy rules and evidence or something else, some other part of evidence. Take the focus on the part that you don't know and look there. So make your objective assessment and then act. But don't rely on your gut feeling. Oh, I'm no good at any of this. I can't do anything. Oh, the bar's too hard. Oh, this. Oh. That's not an objective assessment. That's an emotional assessment. Might be real in terms of how you feel, but it is not objective. So go to the objective measure as much as you can. Okay, so that's number 2, make the objective assessment. The third thing that you do when you hit the wall that's connected to these first two about transitioning and make an objective assessment is that I want you to push your limit line. What's a limit line? Well, I talked about this week with our students, and I referenced a book by Lisa Nichols. She's the motivational writer and speaker. You might remember her from the movie The Secret. And Lisa Nichols talks about her dislike of the term comfort zone. And she says, when people say I'm getting out of my comfort zone, she said, I hate that because it implies that there is something called a comfort zone. And we should never be in a comfort zone. We should always be looking to push the limit lines in our lives to exceed and continue to do more than we've done in the past. In other words, we should never feel comfortable or uncomfortable. We should simply be moving the limit line further back. I think that when you get to this stage in your study, you need to push your limit line. You need to acknowledge that you're at the wall, but the wall is not the finish line for you. It's not the limit line. And so you don't give up. I honestly would say very few people seem to give up, take off their number at the marathon and walk away in the middle. Most people keep going. Well, how is that? Well, I think that at some point we all have to find our why, the reason that we're doing this. And we talked about this in episode 129 when I talked about passion and vision. If you haven't listened to that episode, I really encourage you to do that, because part of what you need to do is figure out why you're doing all this. What's the importance for you of becoming a member of the bar? And when you get that in mind, the limit line can be pushed further back. You can do more than you thought you could do. Now, I recommended to my students that they take a stack of stick-its or post-it notes and write on them a series of short affirmations about themselves and about this study process. And in our course, we've got a list of those affirmations, but you can find them lots of places or just make up your own. And then what I told our students to do is to take each one of those affirmations, each one on a separate sticky note, and put them in the places where they're likely to see them during their day. So the dashboard of their car, or the bedroom wall, or the bathroom mirror, or the back door as you're leaving the house, the back of the door, or on your computer screen, not preferably in the middle of it, but someplace where you can see it. And then to keep reciting those affirmations. so that when the lies come to mind, and they do come to mind for every one of us, that say, you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not a good enough writer, you're not good enough at multistate, you're not good enough at standardized tests, you're no good under stress, you panic. I mean, all of those crazy lies that there's some part of all of our psyche that tells us that you stop that by saying, that is a lie. That is a lie. And you then replace the lie with an affirmation. And the affirmation should be something that you've seen so often that it really becomes known to you or memorized in a sense, so that you're able to say, I am capable of succeeding on this exam. I expect to pass the exam. I can analyze multi-state questions accurately. I can write with clarity and discipline and organization. I can bring my understanding of the law to solve the problems on the bar exam, and so on and so on. You want to replace the lies in your mind with truth. And the truth is that you can push your limit line. Now, I think this form of affirmation goes a long, long way. And we've got lots of affirmations and tools in our course. We've got paraliminals, we've got built-in affirmations. And if you don't have those things in your course, well, you picked the wrong course. But beyond that, go find them. I mean, get them. It's a good diversion for an hour, and it will be helpful to you. It comes in handy. The other part about pushing your limit line, at least that I saw in the marathon today, was that somehow the supporters, the fans of particular runners, seem to know where their runner's wall exists, how many miles into the route. And so they positioned themselves at about that spot. I saw people on bikes and cars and walking with chairs and going to a particular spot on the route. And I heard them talking, and they were saying, why are you going to that spot? Oh, that's the hard part for my wife. When she gets to this spot, it's really tough. So I'm going there to cheer her on. Or someone else said, it's my brother and my dad running, and I know this is going to be the spot on the route that's going to be toughest for them. I really want to encourage them at that spot. And when people came by those spots, you could hear the folks cheering and yelling, and you could see the runners kind of pick up and shake their fists and wave and just have a little more energy. Well, I think you need to find your cheerleaders as well. You need to find the 1 or 2 or 3 people who will be cheerleaders for you, who will pick you up at this stage, who will encourage you and remind you. It might be your kids, it might be your spouse or your significant other, maybe it's an employer, maybe it's your bar review mentor, maybe it's all of those people, maybe it's a good friend. Well, whoever it is, make sure that those people are in fact supporting you and accept their support. Don't push them away. Don't pick a fight you don't have to pick. Let them cheer you on. It's okay. It's not a sign of weakness, and it's a great way to push your limit line all the way up to the finish line. All right, I've got 2 more strategies for you. Let's jump into number 4. Number 4 is totally counterintuitive. Doesn't make any sense to you when I say it, but listen anyway. Number 4 is you need to give to someone else. You need to give to someone else. Look, you're right in the middle of it. Doesn't the world know that you're taking a bar exam in 15, 16, 17 days? Well, apparently not, because as I'm recording, there are people at airports across the country. There is an incredible amount of activity, political and social, going on. And regardless of what your politics are, you can't be oblivious to the fact that something significant is happening here in the United States. And at this particular moment, to have your life totally wrapped up in the bar exam probably feels a little weird to some of you. It feels like, geez, I really should be paying attention to what's going on, but I got to study for the bar. And you do. But within your day, within your world, within your work, your life and your community, find 30 minutes to an hour to just do something for someone else. It doesn't have to be a grand gesture. It doesn't have to be a big deal, but you need to get outside your own world. Now, I recorded an episode before the last bar exam where I talked about the allegory, Plato's allegory of the man in the cave. This is the person that's literally chained to a cave, and they can't see the back of the cave. The sun comes across the cave, and all they see are the shadows on the wall. And after a while, the man in the cave, according to Plato, begins to believe that the shadows are reality instead of shadows, because they can never turn around and see the reality of the sun coming across the cave. That's a pretty good analogy for a bar taker at this point. You tend to believe that the shadows are real, that the only thing that matters is the bar exam, when in point of fact, to the vast majority, 99.99% of the world, your bar exam doesn't matter in the least. That's just the reality. And if you take a moment to acknowledge that reality by doing something nice for someone, maybe it's helping, bring the groceries in from the car, or taking the dog for a walk, or, just spending time talking to a relative that maybe doesn't always get a phone call or a visit. Do something for someone else. Here's why it's so important. When you're hitting the wall and you can get your focus on somebody or something else, when you come back to your studies, you will come back energized. You'll come back with more of a sense of perspective. You will realize how fortunate you are to be in a position to take the bar exam. There are a lot of people that aren't in that position, that would love to have the chance to come even and fail the bar exam, but aren't anywhere close to that. It's okay to get that perspective, and you need that perspective. Remember, we talked about the objective assessment. This is one way to get it. So I want you to try and do something for someone else. I want you to share. Now, as I was watching runners out on the route today, I noticed that a lot of them were sharing. They were talking to each other. They were giving each other water if they needed it, or a bottle of water. They were, in some cases, rubbing someone's back or leg, helping them out. I mean, whatever it took to make a cooperative effort. Now, I don't think that that's because they're trying to gain an edge on them. I think it's because they genuinely want to see them succeed along with them. And so I would encourage you to do that. One of the things that I'm most excited about over the last couple of years is that we've created our own private Facebook group called the Extra Mile for Bar Exam Takers. Imagine that. And this group is made up of students in our course, but also past successful students and our staff. And one of the things I love is how much sharing goes on in this community, that people who are studying for the bar share their ideas and their thoughts, as well as the concerns and frustrations that they've got. And people take time out from their own studies to help out a fellow student. And you might say, well, I don't want to do that. They might pass and I might fail. Really? Is that really the way that we should approach this? And so what I see is the spirit of cooperation and community, and it's absolutely terrific to witness. And so if you're part of that kind of a community, take advantage of it, not only by receiving something, but giving something. Be someone that can support other people. As you give to others, it will help you get past the wall in your own bar study life. And then the fifth and final item that I would say is that you need to finish strong. I know that that's a copyrighted, trademarked phrase, so I'm not trying to steal the phrase. But in fact, one of the things I noticed about the finish line and the early runners, the really good, I guess, almost professional marathon runners were finishing, is that they finish strong. They put in that kick at the end. They really push going right into the end. Now, I'm pretty sure that they can't do that unless they pace themselves throughout the entire course. In other words, they can't do it by going crazy in the first 10 miles and then they don't have anything left at the end. I think the point here for a bar taker is that you have to pace these next how many ever days you've got till the exam. You don't want to put all of your energy in right now and go crazy and spend 15, 18 hours a day cramming, so that when you get to the bar exam, which is the finish line, you're exhausted. You have nothing left. I constantly just shake my head in bewilderment at the people that treat the finish line as the end of their studies instead of the bar exam. No, the finish line is the last day of the last hour of the bar exam. That's when you're finished. Not when you finish your study guide or your syllabus or all of your assignments. Not when you finish your big box bar review, forced everyone's on the same subject at the same time at the same day approach. That's crazy. And when you've got the wrong finish line, it's really tough to finish strong. So in order to finish strong, you have to pace yourself over these next few weeks. You have to really think about what you're doing and why you're doing it, what the impact is, and then modulate what you're doing. Now, surprisingly, I will tell our students to actually do less in the final few days before the exam, not more, because I want you coming to the exam rested and relaxed, focused, ready to go. Not exhausted, not wiped out, not sleep deprived, not over-caffeinated, not crazy because you haven't seen or heard or done anything else for the last few months. Those people who are sitting outside the doorway to the bar exam testing room with their books in hand, frantically highlighting or trying to memorize their flashcards or repeating mnemonics to themselves. There's a word for those people. It's called a repeater. they will not pass the bar exam statistically. They just won't. And so if you're in that mode, I can just tell you, it's not going to work. So stop trying to do that. Take these other steps that we've talked about, which would, I think, get you much, much closer. Transition now to your review mode, or do it soon. Secondly, make an objective assessment of where you are and then act on what you learn. Third, push your limit line. Find out your why, find your cheerleaders, and then push on and use the affirmations to help you reach your goals. Fourth, give to someone else. Do something kind for someone else. Get outside of your own brain and be part of your community. And then finish strong. Pace yourself so that you've got the energy when you get to the exam to be really effective. Well, that's my message for today. I hope it's been helpful for you. I really look forward to hearing the stories as you all are coming into the exam. It's a great, exciting time. There's a lot going on. And I hope that this series on study strategies has been a good one for you. I hope that these strategies make sense and they assist you. And for those of you taking the exam later, I would definitely bookmark these 5 episodes as things that you can use. We'll be back next week with some thoughts about what to do right before the exam, some ideas and things that can help you get the most out of your test days. So look forward to seeing you next week. And if you're looking for any of those past episodes, or you just want to subscribe, you can do that by going to celebrationbarreview.com. You'll see a link at the top of our page for podcasts. Click there, you'll find the show notes and all of the prior episodes. And you can subscribe from there, or you can subscribe from iTunes or iHeartRadio. And we'd love to have you be with us as we go through and continue our journey on the extra mile. That's all for this week. Take care. Have a great week. And as always, I'll see you on the pass list.
Thanks for listening to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers at www.celebrationbarreview.com.